Hi. Last time we had worked on the facade of the building. We had done a good section of it. I wanted to concentrate on the steeple this time, and I had started at home a little bit on it. And what I want to stress this time is, even though I took the photograph on a day where it was overcast and we didn't have too many shadows falling, I'm going to create a shadow. In that, it's always a better drawing when you have a building with shadows, at least on one side of it. It just makes for a better drawing. Later on, when they want to use it for any type of purpose, for print purposes, the shadow is really going to make the whole building come to life. It's going to have a dimension to it. If you don't have that dimension, it looks kind of awkward. So when I do the steeple, I'm going to include that thought. I'm going to have part of this steeple have a little shadow on its side. I had started at home just to make sure that the angles were correct. We are going to work on individual facets of that steeple. I already did some shadows here. I'm not quite done with the actual tower part. I'm going to do that on my own. I actually have to go back there and look at it one more time. So even though you take photographs, you always have to go back and get better reference. And I will. The clock itself, I want to do that on my own. I really want to be careful with that. I mean, it's easy enough to put in hours. Just a matter of putting in. I could actually do it freehand. It'd be no problem. I just want to be very careful with it. Let's do the front facade. Here we go. Remember what I said about the shadows? That includes little side areas like this. So we're going to do that. This section here, not a big black shadow, but just stipple. That's where we're going to concentrate on. Likewise here on this side, we're going to keep that consistent. We're going to keep that shadow consistent on this side. That's a very important thing about shadows. If they're not consistent, the whole effect is lost. Inconsistency in a shadow makes for a very awkward drawing. It makes for an awkward rendering, and people cannot understand what you're talking about or what you're drawing. And that's a bad composition. Now, I'm going to keep this side relatively light. So this side is one that's going to have shadow. This is a side that just begins to get a little darker. So we're going to put just a very light amount of stipple in there. Very light. The next amount of stipple is going to be a little bit heavier. As you can see, it's almost dramatic. And that's what you want. You want it to be obvious that there's either a change in the sun's approach, the fact that it might be later in the day, but you want that. You really want it to be obvious. Makes for a more interestingly obvious building. So here we go. Keep it consistent. Draw it darker. And the way to do it is stipple. If you use solid black, it'd be a little bit too much. I want it to be not that dramatic. I'd rather it be just a little on the obvious side, but not dramatic. You see already it's really effective. I think I'll do the clock at my convenience. I want to really do it casually, not. I want it to be gradual. I would like to do everything in front of you, but sometimes it's best to do some things at their leisure and do it really slowly. And not that I'm afraid, I'm sure I could do it. It's just I really wanted to have my leisure to do it slowly. Even this, there's a little bit of an angle change to this, so we're going to make it very slow. Now this is a 0.25 head on this rapidograph. I like the size. Some people would prefer a 0.18, which is almost microscopic, and the effect is just so fine it drives me crazy. 0.20 is not bad, but this is 0.25. I used to do a lot of my drawings with a 0.30, which is a little bit more obviously thicker, and it makes for a quicker drawing. I mean, you get done in half the time, but the effects are not as I like the nuance. Okay, you can see the difference already. It's interesting to have all that shadow. Makes the building seems thicker, more alive, more real. I'll do the clock tower, the actual clock, later. I want to take my time with the exact hour. All right, let's go into this front part. It's all wood. Again, I'm not measuring it. I'm not one of those guys that measure these things. It's enough that it looks measured. Sometimes appearance is all you need. I think I want to make this a little bit darker. So what I'm going to do is go over it twice. Here we go. Again, I'm not measuring it. I'm pretty much winging it. I hope it looks accurate. Later on, we're going to erase all the pencil. Looks good. Like I said, later on when we're all done, we're going to erase a lot of the pencil anyway. It's a good idea. Even though I use a very light pencil, I use a 6H, it will erase nicely, and for the most part, later on, if you want to make a copy of it, the pencil will not show up so much. The ink obviously will. I think I'll make a double line here too for the same reason. A little more impact on it. Here we go again. Even though I penciled it, the ink is what's going to make a real impact. Double line, obviously more shadow on that side. Likewise on here, obviously the light doesn't filter. Well, let's do the top one first. Now, in this area, because we're going to emphasize some of the shadow here, we're going to go with stipple and put a little stipple on this side. A little bit more here, not so much here. Remember, this is the side that's just turning, so we don't want to have that angle too dark. It's the angle that results next is the one that's going to be darker. It's more of a 45-degree angle. This one's more like a, I'd say a 25, 26-degree angle right here. But this one is more severe. And the more stipple you put in, the more you're showing that to be the case. Good. Now, I didn't put any in the clock. I want to put the actual hour in there, and then I'll put some stipple in. Same thing is going to happen with this segment. We're going to darken this side and put a light amount of stipple on this particular area. Again, to emphasize the fact that there are different angles involved. We could do the same thing here. Let's put a heavy amount of stipple in this area, again, to demonstrate the fact that there's been an angle change. Interestingly, we have most of the steeple is done. The only thing I haven't done is the actual hour, the clock setting, and I could do that later. I might want to fix them on a certain hour that is fitting. Maybe one that'll best represent the amount of shadow that is cast. So obviously 12 o'clock would not be a good setting. I think 2 o'clock would be more accurate for the amount of shadow that's relevant, or for the amount of shadow that's obvious. If I put like 11 o'clock, it would make no sense whatsoever, because there is not that much shadow at 11 o'clock. That is more of a 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock shadow. And the worst thing you do is have inconsistencies in your drawing. Not that most people would notice, but there are those artists out there who would look at that and say, hey, what was he thinking? The other thing is to, now that you put all the shadow here and let's say not there, that would be an inconsistency too. So you have to put the shadows all through. Be consistent. So here we go. We're going to put a few shadows there. Consistency, very important. When it comes to architecture, it's the most important thing. If you're doing caricatures, consistency is important, but not like architecture. You're doing a face, you get away with murder sometimes. But you can't get away with murder with architecture. You'll always be cut to hang and people will kill you. Architecture is a very, very hard medium. It takes a lot of, again, all you need is one person out there to catch you and say, geez, that building actually has 7 rows of bricking, not 4. With a caricature, you get away with murder, because that's more of an interpretation of the face. Alright, looks pretty good. I think the only thing I have to add to this is the area here. Just a wee bit. Just a small amount of stipple there. Obviously, it's not going to show the same amount of shadow. This area here is just turned a wee bit. I'll probably darken this up later. You know, I'm going to look at this at my leisure and decide whether or not it could be darker. Again, like I said before, it's easy to darken something up. It's not easier in ink to lighten it. I'm not one of those guys that likes to put white paint in his work. You'll never see me do that. I don't like doing that. I would opt on the side of waiting and seeing what could be darkened, but not trying to fake the viewer into thinking it. My interpretation is the only one that matters. I don't think so. Looking good. Looking good. I'm not putting the clock face in yet. We're going to work on that one later. We'll put a little shadow underneath this area. Just a little. Just do a little bit here, a little bit here. A little bit more on this side. That's more of the lee side. It's going to be a little bit darker there. Consistency is what's important. Okay, I like that. We'll have to do a little erasing there, a little bit of pencil that was heavy. I pretty much like that. I think the steeple looks pretty good. Not bad at all. Let's do a little bit of work here. That was all penciled, so now I'm going to ink it. Very good. All right, we can go back to this area. I think the steeple looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. Or I could actually do the clock now. I could actually do the miracles on it. That might be better. I'm not going to make the numbers visible. I'm not that anal. I'm going to let the viewer decide what the numbers are. I'm not going to put the hands in though. I'm going to think about that and make it obvious later. All right. I guess since I pretty much measured each one of these. I'm just going to put a very light dose of graphite, stipple, let's say, to each one of these. It's not going to be as heavy as the rest of the building. And yet, one or two might be a little bit darker than the rest. But I don't want it to be like the rest of the facade. I want it to be different, so people could actually see that this is an arch above the doorway. Now this is much lighter than the rest, so I'm really going to use a very nominal amount of stipple. Might play around with some of these, might make one or two darker. Not a lot. I'm going to actually try to get the door in place. You can actually see the amount of stipple each one of these glasses have, and you could pretty much gauge what an impact that has. I may make one or two of these a little bit darker just to have a slight difference. Alright, let's get the windows going. Remember what we said, we're going to have some of these be very gradual on top. As we go lower, they get more full of stipple, and we're going to see what happens. I want to get that door in. That'd be nice to show you. Remember, light on top, dark as we go down lower. Now, the good thing about this is any type of mistake you've made will be obliterated by the fact that you're putting stipple in. The fact that we haven't put any stipple on the actual awning, the white part, that's what's going to be interesting. That will hold true. It'll stick out like crazy. Whereas before, it really didn't make much of an impact, but having left that alone, all of a sudden now it does have an impact. Now we're going to go lower, darker. Darker. The great thing is when you get to a certain area, you could actually just make it solid black. It would really work well. Be kind of nice. We'll have a good section of the library done, and you can actually envision from that section what the whole will look like. A lot of people would argue with the fact that I'm doing it the way I am. Some people would prefer you do sections in random. I like doing completeness, and in that I'll have like 1/3 of it done, and the rest of it I'm going to try to achieve. Some people are. That's the way I do faces. That's the way I do everything. I'd rather give myself an anchor. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, then I could always change what I'm working and probably scramble and see what I could save or alter. That's a possibility too. But so far so good. This building is looking pretty good. If it wasn't, I'd be very embarrassed because I have an audience to apologize to. But it's working out pretty good. I have nothing to apologize for. This looks pretty good. A lot of it has to do with just preparation, taking a good photograph, taking a good pencil drawing of the building. And let's face it, I've been doing this for many years. A lot of times too, you got to get the right angle. A lot of people work face front, and I always like a little bit of an angle. A little bit of an angle makes the whole building look complete. A little depth to it, what have you, just a little bit of depth. All right, looks like this window's coming alive. Next time I think I'll try to have all of this front part done, and we can actually work on the new section. See what happens. You'll see the building's really going to come to life.